This is an overview of how the Romans dealt with the provinces, how they governed the provinces during the Republican era. There'll be another video on the imperial era later. There's no skinny for this. There's a lot of notes. There's a lot of detail. You're just going to have to take the notes as best you can. So, under the Republic, when a new province was conquered, the Senate would draw up a provincial law, lex provinciae, and that determined what the limits, the borders of the province would be, which towns were included in the province, what the rights of the local inhabitants were. It also made clear how much was expected of the province in terms of tribute. This was taxation or other payments from the province to the Roman government. A Senate would appoint a magistrate to rule the province, and that magistrate, together with a quaestor and up to 3 legati, or 3 lieutenants, would run the show. A lot of detail here, I do warn you. So the governor would exercise control over the province for a year. Later on in the Republic, for reasons we'll come on to later, this tended to become 2 years. But because the governors had a degree of autonomy, they would often abuse that position, and they would often extort money from the provincial population. A governor was not bound by the decisions or the rulings made by the previous governor. And when you factor in the idea that these positions were changing every 12 months, that could lead to a lot of instability in the province. All of the governors had previously served as consuls or praetors, and in their new position as governors in the province, they were a proconsul or propraetor. The financial affairs of the province would be administered by a former quaestor. The Senate decided which provinces would be administered by which outgoing consuls or former consuls, or which quaestors. And the praetors and consuls would then draw lots to determine their particular provinces. So, if you can imagine, especially towards the end of the Republic, when instability has become an everyday reality in the Roman Republic, the best consuls, praetors, quaestors, they were all needed in Rome, so fewer of them would be sent out to the provinces. And of course, changing the governor every year led to increased instability in an already unstable environment. So a lot of the governors and officers would be kept on for a second year in the province. So who rules the provinces? Well, in theory, what shouldn't be the governor. Ultimate power is with the Senate. They're the ones who make the decisions. They act on information that's coming back from the provinces, and annually they can appoint or replace governors. So in theory, the Senate has power. But governors, while they were in position, had sufficient power to abuse. So if a governor did happen to start abusing his position, extorting or stealing from a province, the citizens had very, very little recourse. They did have some, though. At the end of a governor's term of office, they could bring a prosecution against that governor in order to recover money that was lost or goods that were lost. And if the Senate found the governor guilty of misbehavior, he had to pay back double the sum that he was accused of taking. Now, a problem in this situation is that the Senate tended to look after their own, and it was very rare that a governor, once he had served his time in office, was ever prosecuted for misadministering his position. However, it did happen, and famously it occurred when Cicero, or Cicero, prosecuted the former governor of Sicily, Gaius Verres, on behalf of the people of Sicily. Cicero had worked in Sicily as a financial officer in the past. The people respected and trusted him. So at the end of Gaius Verres' term of office, they petitioned Cicero to prosecute Verres in a case which on the surface he had no right to win, but ultimately he won it quite resoundingly. We will get to in Verres in a later video. Anyway, that should be enough for today. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask me in class.